Good morning, or afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. How's everyone's day? And also, thank you for everyone's suggestions. We'll be getting started in a few minutes on the class, but we're going to be doing kind of these, the suggestion I chose was Enchanted Forest, and I had a ton of fun painting these. It's always a good day when you get to go to the art supply store. While we're waiting for the time to hit, so today what we're going to be doing are these Enchanted Forests. It's a fun layering exercise, and there's a few different things you can do with this. I'm trying to find my other sketchbook that has another version, because I did a bunch of these yesterday. I swear my sketchbooks just walk away sometimes. Oh, here we go. I also did kind of one like this that I thought would be kind of fun to add some maybe acrylic details to get some little sparkles and things on. I don't know if we'll have time for that, but maybe. The other thing you guys can weigh in on, so yeah, the two suggestions that like really kind of stuck out. One was this Enchanted Forest, and we're definitely doing this one today, or one similar. I've got another one over here too. But the other one that kind of felt similar in vein, but different, was this like potion bottle ones. And I don't know if I've completely figured this out, especially the glass part of this. I need to practice a little bit more. But we could kind of dip our toe into this too today if we feel like it. So let me know. Oh, hi, Christina. You love the pink and the blue? Cool. We'll definitely kind of, I'm probably going to be painting two of these forests today. And then maybe, because we do have to wait for some of this to dry quite a bit, we could do something else too. So let me know if you want to do the potions as well. Also, ooh, look at this. This is kind of cool. On this one, I used those chroma or the Uli chroma neon colors. And so the background color I painted is technically fluorescent. Which I just thought was kind of fun. Okay, maybe we will dive into doing at least one little potion too. All right, it's 11 o'clock. My name is Lacey Walker for anybody who is new that's joining, and I am the teacher behind Rebel Unicorn Crafts. And this week I wasn't really sure what to paint, and you guys came through with the comments. I do plan on playing with the koi fish at some point, so if that's one of the things that you've been waiting for, I apologize. I've been a little busy with a few different things, and I don't know, something about it isn't quite coherent or congealing in my mind right yet. And so anyways, today what we're going to do is we're going to be painting together. I understand everybody's going to have different supplies, but you can follow along. You can do exactly what I'm doing, or feel free to do whatever you want to. We're going to probably be doing two different little forest scenes. So I'm going to use this sketchbook, and I'm going to flip these over. And we're going to be doing probably some similar ones to this, or this one here. And then we're also going to be doing some of those potion bottles too. So let's go ahead and I'm going to flip this over here. And I've been liking, oh, is this going to fit? There we go. I've been liking taping off in my little notebook just to get those little windows. So I'm going to do that. You're going to need some colors and you'll need a brush. I'm going to be using a size 12 round brush. And I might actually be doing my backgrounds with this mop brush I have too. So if you've got a flat wash brush, if you got a flat wash brush, that will be helpful. I think there was a spam account in here, so I just tried to get rid of that. Good morning, good evening as well. All right, I'm going to tape these down, and then in case you joined a little bit later, I will flip back over to my other pages to show you what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be doing Enchanted Forest. I cannot remember whose comment that was at the moment, so if that was your comment, give yourself some credit in the comments now. And this is just a really cheap masking tape. I just buy whatever the cheapest one I can find because I use a lot of it. And if you're asking questions in the comments, I'm having trouble keeping track of all of them. So if I don't answer, you can feel free to ask again. Or I know sometimes I have some very helpful people in the comments. If you feel like helping me answer, I always appreciate that. And I'm really excited everyone is here. We're going to have some fun today. Just take a minute to relax and paint and take it your own way, but maybe you can take a few lessons from what I'm doing as well. Haven't missed anything yet. Okay, let's go back over what we're going to be painting today. So I asked you guys for suggestions, and the ones that I'm going to be doing today are, we're going to be painting a couple different things. In my lives, we always have to paint a couple things so that they can dry completely and I don't use the hairdryer and ruin all of your eardrums. So we're probably going to be painting 2 Enchanted Forests, something similar to this or this, and then, or even this, if you want to have some different color ideas. And if we're waiting for a long time for things to dry, we're going to have to wait and kind of see. But if we are, then we might dip our toe into another suggestion that was in the comments for the video, which was potion bottles. And I don't have this completely down, but this is kind of fun to play with. So it might be kind of fun for us to experiment a little bit with, depending on the time. So yes, thank you everyone for helping out. Today, the watercolors that I'm going to use are a palette from Stuart Simple Culture Hustle. They're just a dried pan set here. And I kind of use this one a lot in my lives because they don't have traditional names, because I don't want people to get so stuck on the exact colors I'm using. Just use colors that are kind of similar, because I know we're all going to be working from different palettes. So I think that's helpful. I might also throw in some of my background colors with these. These are those Uli Chroma blends. They're technically neon watercolors. And I did that on these ones. And you can actually see that they're a little bit fluorescent in the background, so they can look even more kind of magical or enchanted. All right, we're really going to get into it now. So what I've done to prep is I've got my water over to the side. I can't put everything in the screens just because of space. Working in a sketchbook today. This is 140-pound paper. And I have taped off my little squares. You don't have to do that part, but I just think it's kind of fun. So I've got little rectangles that are taped off with some just very basic masking tape. So very first thing I want to do to get prepped and ready to go is I'm going to kind of just wet all of my colors so that they're ready to be used when it's time. I'm going to do the same for these because I think I'm going to start with kind of that greenish bluish colored one for the background. We'll do one that has kind of that teal greenish blue color scheme, and then we're going to do another one. Let's do one that is kind of like that. Our second one, let's do this kind of pink and purple kind of color one. Okay, so for this, we're going to be doing a lot of layering, so get ready to be patient with layers because we do need a lot of these layers to dry. And the very first thing we want to do is just make a really light wash. So this is going to be the color that's going to show through everything at the very end. I'm going to start mine. I'm going to use these Uli Chroma blends. You could use whatever light colors you want. You don't want this to be too dark, but I'm going to take some of this green. And I'm going to need quite a bit of this. So I'm going to grab a little more water because I need this to go across. So I'm going to get a bunch of greens, maybe a little bit of this yellow, and maybe a little of this blue too. Stuart Simple, yeah, you have to buy the Stuart Simple one on their website. And then I'm just going to put this in here. Just going to place this. We don't have to be super duper careful with the background. Oops. My little binder clip is being stretched to its capacity. Okay, putting some of this in. I'm going to make a little variation with some different colors, maybe pop in some brighter ones. We want this to be kind of smooth, but it doesn't need to be absolutely perfect because we're going to be putting a ton of details over it. And I might even do a second little layer in a little bit. So we're going to start by just putting some color there. You don't have to wet your page first. I mean, you can if you want it to flow around a little bit more. But if you're using a really light wash, you can get away with not wetting your page first. So today we're doing Enchanted Forest-esque. This is going to be a really good layering exercise. Okay, so I've got one background here. I'm going to be painting two of these. So I'm going to move over to this one because I need to make a background on this one. And for this one, I'm not going to use any of these neon colors. I'm going to be dipping into kind of more of a normal palette. And yes, I do typically upload these to my YouTube a day or two afterwards. I think I'm behind by one, so I apologize for that. It's been quite a busy week for me. Okay, let's I don't know what's happening today, but in the comments, let's just remember that everybody paints a little bit different, and let's try to just learn together and experiment. Not everybody's going to paint the same way, and that's totally fine, okay? So, yeah. All right. Sorry, that threw me off a little bit. We don't usually get kind of comments like that in these lives, so bear with me while I get back to this. Okay, what I want to do is I'm going to be doing some kind of pinks and purples up near the top. And then I'm going to move into some darker blues because I want to get a little variation, kind of galaxy-esque for this background here. So all I'm going to do is dip in over here. I'm going to be mixing up some kind of pink type colors. And this is my one gripe with this palette here, is that the magentas in here are not as good as some of my other magentas, but we can make it work. I'm also going to grab a little tester strip just to kind of see what colors I'm actually mixing up, because it's a little different when you put it on the paper. This is a really good thing to just try to keep when you finish paintings, or if you're cutting up little pieces, keep your little scrap pieces. It's super helpful. All right, let's get a nice kind of pinky color. And then I'm going to mix up a second color so I just have it ready to go. And I might also dip right into these pigments too as we go on and get things kind of nice and wet. And this one I'm going to go more into the purple for this one. Maybe a little bit towards blue, so I'm grabbing a couple purples, one blue. Some of these are going to flow together. That's okay. And then, so we've got a nice pink, we've got a purple, and we will also want a blue, so maybe let's mix that up too. You probably don't have to, because we're going to be working so wet. On this one, what I'm actually looking for is I kind of want an imperfect wash. I want it to look a little bit like those galaxy-inspired paintings where maybe there's some variation. And I'm kind of a bit of a space nerd, and so I love like the artist renderings or the photography of different nebulas where it kind of looks like clouds, and it's very, I don't know, just like it's not an even coating of color. So that's kind of what I'm looking for here. So I'm going to mix up a blue color too. And that's kind of like an ultramarine I just added. I'm going to maybe add in a little cobalt. I like to add in a couple different colors. And then this is like a Prussian type blue, which I love. Prussian and phthalo blues. They're my favorite. So these are, I don't know if these are technically artist or student grade. These are advertised as the coloriest colors by Stuart Simple. So they're meant to be very, very pigmented, but I don't know if they're technically artist grade. Okay. So for this, I've got pink, purple, and blue. So I'm going to start up here. Let's get this a little better centered. And I'm going to start with this pink. I'm just going to kind of place this down. Again, I'm looking for a really imperfect wash. If you wanted yours to be a little bit more perfect, you could be a little more careful. But all I'm going to do is start by kind of carving out an area that I want to be pink. Maybe I will drop a little bit of that purple in there too. And then I'm going to kind of move down to some more of these blue colors here. Adding in some blues. And again, I don't want this to be a super duper perfect one, but I'm going to let this soak in for a little bit. And then I think I'm actually going to grab my smaller brush here. And I do typically like to dry my brush off and try to get some of this excess standing water around these little areas. Now, technically, if you want to have a slightly better result, if you hold this at an angle, you'll be able to control the direction that this is moving. But I gotta kind of let this sit flat. It's a little bit easier to work with all this other stuff going on around my workspace. And since I don't really care if this is absolutely perfect, I'm not going to be so careful there. Then if we want to, we can come in and take some more kind of pigmented, ooh, that's a little bit too red. Let's wipe that off. A little more pigmented if we wanted to. This is like the one time in a wash where I'm going to encourage you to go back in, mess with it a little bit more. Usually you just want to kind of let it sit. But if you want some more pigment, go in, drop that in. I'm wanting a little of this variation personally. If you want yours to be more even, don't mess with it. as much. And you could totally do this all with this. This is just letting me apply this color a little bit faster. Okay, so here's what we've started with. We've got our backgrounds. And remember, what we're doing is we're going to be building layers. So this is what we're going to see kind of shining through our like enchanted forest. And I need to let these kind of dry for a little bit. So let's do one more thing. I'm going to grab another sketchbook. And on this one, just because of the way we need to let these dry for quite a while, I want to work on a couple different things. And in this one, a few people said they were interested in this. If you don't feel like following this part, it's totally fine. But I'm going to be doing some of these little like potion bottles. I need to work on the glass on these, but I did these right before class because that was another suggestion in my comments, and I like using these back runs in these. It kind of shows some of the motion. I don't know, it's just a lot of fun to do some wet on wet techniques for these. So that's going to be our second one. Now for this, we are going to need to do a little bit of sketching, which I know sometimes intimidates some people, but let's break some of these down. So when we're talking about bottles, in general, different potion bottles have different shapes. And if we want to do one that has kind of that nice round bottom, one of the best things you can do is find something that's near you that's circular. So let's look. Let me find something that's about the right size for what I want. Here, I've got this thing of Frisket, or masking fluid, and I'm going to start by just kind of tracing around this one here. We don't need this to completely center, but I've made a nice little circle here. And I'm going to be drawing mine a lot darker than what you should if you don't want to be able to see your pencil lines, but I want you guys to be able to see what I'm doing. So this is going to be darker. You can also use watercolor pencils if you want it to completely disappear. Then right in the center, let's kind of take a look at where about halfway down. And we're going to want to make a little kind of tube up here. Then we need a little rectangle up here to kind of show the little lip of the glass, a real thin lip. We're also going to want to flatten the bottom here. Again, draw lighter than what I'm drawing, but just so that you guys can see what's happening. And then we're going to want to be able to see that little stopper, and this is basically going to be a triangle with the bottom cut off, and then a little disc at the top. We're also going to want to hint to where the potion line is going to be, and that's going to be a slight curve with another slight curve there, and that's where we're actually going to put this in. When we do paint in here, we're going to want to leave a gap between our outer line, because that's going to kind of be able to show a little bit of that illumination that glass gets. Okay. Next thing we want to do is make another shape. Let's make one that's a little bit more straight up and down. And you can make yours varying in heights, but let's just start with kind of a rectangular type shape. I'm going to make my bottoms about the same. And then I'm going to make this kind of triangular at the top. Maybe this potion level is going to be somewhere in here. Bring up a little neck of the bottle, that same little rectangle here. And then again, we need our little triangle with the bottom cut off and the little, well, I want that to come up a little bit more. A little bit of like an oval shape there. And then let's make, I guess on that, my last one, the one that I did previously, what was the other shape? Oh, This is kind of a fun little shape to make, so let's make that shape where it's a little bit more angled. So let's start by defining kind of where the bottom is going to be. It's going to be here. And making kind of a triangle. This is not my best line there. That's okay. And on this one, I kind of want this to be like one of those big, beautiful perfume bottles where there's actually a big hunk of glass at the bottom that's unused. So I'm going to start by kind of carving that out. And then if we wanted to bring this out here and then up, you can make your bottles whatever shape you want. But these are the shapes I'm going to be making. Again, I need that little rectangle. If you're really intimidated by sketching, I mean, this is just really quick sketching. But if you're super intimidated by it, break whatever you are paint or drawing down into little shapes. That's going to really help you. So really this bottle, rather than trying to make the whole bottle at once, I start kind of with the idea of a triangle here, cut off the bottom. There's another triangle here, rectangle, that type of thing. That will help you a lot. And let's make our little potion line somewhere around here. Okay, so these are ready to actually put our little potions on. Before I do that, let's do a quick check-in to see what's happening on the background of these other two pieces and how dry they are. Now, I'm still getting quite a bit of buckling, so I already know this is still a little bit too wet, but another way to tell if without touching it, because if you touch it, you can grab some of that pigment, is if you kind of hover your hand or your wrist. You're more excited for the bottles? Well, good. We're going to do both today. We're going to hover our, oops, I just touched it. Actually, this is a little bit more dry than I thought it was. Hover your wrist. There's a reason why moms will test like what's in baby bottles on their wrist to make sure it's not too hot, because it's very sensitive and it can really sense heat and moisture. So you can kind of see if there's coolness coming from over it. This one still needs to dry a little bit more. I could probably start to paint on this one in a minute, but I'm going to start. Let's do these first, the very insides. We're going to be painting the potions within. Now, I want you to really let loose with this one. And when you're dropping in the pigment, let it move around and flow. That's what's going to kind of make it look delightful. We do want to consider the direction that the light is coming. So let's just decide right now that in general, it's coming this way. So that means everything's going to be a little bit lighter over here and a little darker kind of down here. So we're going to want to concentrate most of our color right in here. Let's also kind of define where in these, because we don't want these to touch the outsides completely. We want it to feel like there is a bit of glass so that we know where to paint in on all of these. Oops, and then just throw your pencil at yourself. All right, what color should we have our potion be for the first one, for this little round one? Let me know in the comments. Green, okay. Let's do some greens. Okay, I'm seeing, okay, good thing is there's a lot of greens. We'll do other colors on the other ones, so you'll get another chance to vote in just a minute. Let's do some greens, like really kind of bright greens with some darker greens, and maybe drop in a little bit of blue just to get a little variation. So I'm going to start by, let's actually take a look at what some of the greens are in my little palette. So this one is like a real, ooh, I like that color. It might be a little bit more greeny green than I really want. Oh, hello, Kale. It's been a while. This is a nice viridian green. That could be really, really pretty in there. And I do always love a good like yellow green. That could be nice in there too. So actually all of these would be kind of fun to swirl around together. Okay, so I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to start with a kind of similar to a viridian type hue. And I'm going to put my darkest color, I'm going to put it kind of down here. And I'm going to let this sit because I just want it to kind of establish where that's going to be. I'm going to wet my brush and I'm going to kind of just pull some of this into the other areas. And you might start to just like how it looks like that. Like that looks kind of cool. If I were to leave it just like this and let it kind of flow in. Mom life has kept you busy. Well, I'm glad that you're here today. And I already kind of like how this looks. I'm going to pop in those other colors because I think they're going to be fun, but I just love, and I don't even have this whole thing pre-wet or filled in completely because I want a bunch of variation. I want this to look like kind of a magical, physics-defying type color. I'm going to grab a little bit of this other green. Let's pop that in a couple areas. Maybe it's up here a little bit lighter too, to show some of this movement. And just have fun with how you're putting those colors in. Let's get a little bit of that lime green in here too. And then if you need to, you can lift off some of the top part. Let's drop in some more fun colors. Feel free to experiment. Like, what happens if I just drop in a little bit of this blue here? What's that gonna look like? That looks kind of neat. If you want to, you can make it cover everything completely. I'm going to lift a little bit out. Remember, we want this side over here to be a little bit lighter than over here because in general, our light is shining in this direction. So I'm using the Culture Hustle or Stuart Simple watercolor brand. I'm going to leave that there for now. And I'm just going to let this, I actually want to encourage some areas of uneven drying. So I've got a bunch of water down here and it's a lot drier up here. And as this dries, it's going to change and it should get some of those different backgrounds and different things in it that'll make it a little more interesting. All right, for color for the second one, what colors do you want for the second one? Go ahead and tell me in the comments. Pinks and purples. Okay, perfect. There are a lot of purples. So yeah, let's do pinks and purples on this one. So for this one, again, we want to concentrate most of our color down around kind of over in this corner here. And since we're going to be doing some purples, I'm going to use purple as kind of my darkest color over here. This has got a purple and it's got a red violet mixed together. Let's just start by kind of putting that there. Then I'm going to wet my brush and take some of that out. And then I'm going to just kind of soften over here, wet my brush again, pull that out a little bit more. And I might grab some of this pink. This is the Stuart Simple Culture Hustle palette. Ooh, that's a little bit too much red. Let's lift a little bit of that out. Ooh, that made some kind of interesting shapes though. I really want to encourage you to have a good play when you are doing this. Experiment, see what happens when you accidentally add too much color. Sometimes you really learn something interesting about the colors you're using by encouraging some weird things to happen. And I'm going to just drop that in here. I'm adding in just some water to kind of get some different colors going in there. Drop in a little more of this pink. And this is my one gripe with this palette is that the pink isn't super great. I'm actually going to grab a different pink on my very messy palette over here. There we go. That's a little more like the pink that I wanted. A little more purple. Maybe even put a little blue kind of down over here to just show a little more depth or a little darker color. And then I'm going to lift a little bit of this color from kind of the top on this side. Ooh, I like how that one looks too. All right, final one. What color do we want for the inside of this one? I'm going to guess you guys are going to say like oranges and yellows, but you could surprise me. Yeah, let's do some, yeah, I think oranges and yellows would be good for this, so. Okay, so there was a question that I saw about lifting color, and while everything is still nice and wet, you can lift color either you can take your paper towel and you can blot it up, or you can take your brush, wash it off and dry it, and then you can actually lift some of that pigment out. If everything is dried, you still have the option to lift a little bit. You can take a damp brush, and depending on the colors you're using, they're going to be staining or not. But you can actually kind of scrub and grab. Depends on the color itself, how much you're going to be able to get out. And these are, these are dry on this side, but they're not like super duper dry because I put those on relatively recently. But see how much more of that one actually stained the paper than, say, these ones here? Yeah, and I'm going to intentionally put way too much color over here. So if you are somebody who was curious about the color lifting, pay attention over here a little bit because I'm going to try to do this. Now, I will say that a lot of times the yellows I seem to have are a little bit more staining, so we won't see this quite as pronounced as we would have on those other colors, but I will try to. Okay, so we're doing oranges and yellows on this one. So I'm going to start. This is probably most similar to like a vermilion type color. I'm going to put this down over here, really lay down a bunch of that color because again, we want our most concentrated color over to the side. Then I'm going to wash my brush, soften this out. Soften, soften. Then I'm going to grab some other color. Let's take a yellow. This is kind of like if you've got like a permanent yellow. That would be a good comparison color to this. Wash my brush because I just want it to basically be damp with color. And then I'm going to pull this way. Now, let's say that I put a bunch of color here and I'm like, oh, I didn't want that much color there. If I tap my brush off and I make it kind of damp and dry, I can just lift that off right there. And that will help. You're not going to be able to get all of it. I mean, once you put the color down, some of it's going to stay. But it does help you kind of fix some of the mistakes that you may have accidentally made, or at least just tone down some of that. I'm going to grab a little more of that kind of vermilion-esque color and put that in a couple more areas, just to encourage it to look like this color is kind of moving a little bit, or this potion. Yeah, it does look like a candy corn potion. And then the other thing you can play with is if you have different yellows in your palette is some of these, like this little lemon yellow type color. It has a little bit of like a white gouache feel to it where it's more opaque. So if I drop this in, it's actually going to be a little bit heavier and push some of those other things around a little bit and kind of cover some of those darker colors. Okay. So, oh, and I want to lift a little bit of that out on that side too. Cool. I like our three colors. I think you guys made great choices for the colors. And I'm going to set these to the side for now so that these can kind of dry. We're going to modify a little bit on some of these in a minute, and then we will also kind of work on the bottles. You're going to have to bear with me on the bottles because I have painted exactly 3 bottles now when I just did these before class. And so my bottles are not going to be great, but there's a few things that I can maybe show you that might be helpful. Okay. All right, we're getting back to our Enchanted Forest just as a quick reminder to everybody, because I know that we have really gone on quite a detour. Is we're going to be doing something similar to one of these paintings here on both of these. Oh, like a sour apple potion. So one of the comments here, because I don't think the comments show up when I download these to re-upload them, is on the potion bottles we were using, they kind of look like candy, or somebody said candy corn, and then cotton candy, and then this one, yeah, it could be like a green apple. Okay, so we made background layers of nice kind of light colors that we're going to see these at the very end, but we're not going to see them too well because we're going to cover a lot of this with details. Now, the trees that we're going to be doing today are going to be kind of barren trees, so we're thinking like it's almost winter and there aren't going to be leaves, just because that's going to keep things a little bit simpler for us today, and it's a little bit more fun, and sometimes when you do things that are a little easier, you enjoy it a little bit more. Okay, so the color I want my trees to be are kind of like a tealish color, a deep teal color. And we're going to add in a whole bunch of layers. Now, here are a few of my more failed attempts at this, but I'm going to use these as a sample since I've got my other ones covered up over here. So let's be a little bit mindful that these are not ones that I particularly liked. But notice how there are hints to trees in the distance. What we're using is atmospheric perspective in order to kind of help us create this illusion of a whole bunch of things in the forest. We're going to paint these really light ones first, let them dry, then we're going to darken our color, paint those ones as we move forward. And that will kind of help. These are my definite, my failed attempts, so. Oh, a fun dip. Oh, it's been a long time since I've had a fun dip. All right, so I'm going to start by mixing up a color. I'm going to grab a little tester strip because I'm going to want to be able to check my color here. And I'm going to grab quite a bit of this Viridian color and just mix that into that blue I had. Oops, there was some yellow there. Take a little bit of that away. It's all right if there's some in there, but it's a little more yellow than what I wanted. I'm going to grab that green there too. And just mix all of this in. Let's check this out. That's going to be pretty dark for my first layer of trees. I want the first layer to be like almost nearly invisible. Like I want it to be like, ooh, maybe there are more trees. How far does this forest go back? So I've mixed up a color that I like for the base of these. I've got a couple options. I could take some of this and put this into another well with a little more water, or I can just take my brush, grab more water like this, and drip it in to kind of dilute this color. Or if you've got a little pipette, then you can grab that. Or if you've got your spray bottle, you can always spray a little more water in here. Well, hold it in a way where you can actually spray. Yes, everybody has art fails. Absolutely. I've got some real stinkers of paintings, and I do a few things with failed paintings. Sometimes I keep them in order to kind of help me track my own progress. And other times I will cut them up to make these little tester strips, and then I just use the opposite side. So you learn a lot from failing when you are doing art. And sometimes you're going to find out something that you didn't know beforehand while you were failing about the supplies or. Okay, let's check. That's a much lighter color. That's going to be a lot better here. Okay, so for my little trees, if we want to, you can pre-sketch. Like on one of mine, I had a big tree here that I kind of liked. And so that's going to be my final layer. So you can pre-sketch some of that if you want to. It'll help you make some decisions. So let's kind of make a little sketch of that final tree. You don't have to sketch this part because we won't be painting this for a while. Let's say it kind of comes in here. This is a branch. Maybe that branch actually branches up this way too. Or coming down. Here's the trunk. I'm trying to be kind of jagged. I want this to be kind of like one of those creepy-esque trees, you know. Let's bring that branch up this way. And then one of the kind of fun things I had on that tree that kind of brought a little something extra was, I don't know what it is about in these Enchanted Forests. A lot of times they show like some viney structures. You can make kind of a little viney structure that we could add in. And we can hint to some of those elsewhere. But this is going to be like my big final tree. This is going to be my centerpiece. Now, I'm going to ignore that for now. But I just want you to know that that's like kind of the intentional, because we don't have to actually have that be done yet, because we're going to work on the other layers. So I'm taking this lighter teal color and I'm going to define some of these trees. Now, an easy way to make some trees, if you want to just kind of show that there may be some little saplings, is just take your brush and you can just make some lines down. It's not going to be anything like spectacular, but these are the ones that are really in the background. So you don't need a ton of detail on these. You could even make one that's a little bit crooked if you want. If you wanted to make more of a tree type figure, and it might be good to kind of practice this on one of these really light ones. If you come kind of down at an angle, get a little bit thicker, and then come over, and then you can actually turn this into like a little tree that has two forks on it. Don't need a ton of these. We want to put in a couple for our very background. The viney things are often lianas. Oh, that's cool. So I'm actually just going to leave my first layer about like this. Not much needs to happen on that first layer. If you wanted to, you can add in a few more. Maybe actually let's put in a couple more. I'm going to make a slightly thicker one here. I'm going to make another one over here that's got a couple kind of branches off. Maybe it kind of goes in this direction and up. Yeah, I do these lives every Saturday at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. Okay, so here's my very first layer of this one. Then on this one, what we're going to be doing is, actually, here, I'm going to let you guys vote on this one. There are two different kind of structures we can use to make these look like for the trees to kind of form. So we can do, oops, let me get this off. See how this one, it's kind of like they're all up on a ridge and everything comes down, or do we want a little path type thing? Oh, pathway, please. Okay. So I didn't even need to ask. You already remembered. Oh no, we got ridge too. Ridge path, ridge path. All right, I think I'm seeing more path. Okay. In that case, we need to do one more layer for our background to kind of define that pathway. Uh-oh, more ridges. Oh shoot. I'm gonna have to relook through here. Oh no. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to determine what it is. Sandy, you made me laugh with that, so we're doing path. I don't know if I can do path on a ridge. I mean, I guess we can. Let's, how would I do a path on a ridge? I don't know, my brain is not computing that at the moment. All right, so we're doing the path. Okay. Okay, all right. So in order to make our little pathway, we have to decide where it's going to be. This is not going to be a true like perspective type thing, but let's pretend like we need to know where our horizon line is. I'm going to draw mine about a third of the way up here. And I'm going to say that my path is going to disappear. Let's make it about here-esque. Or maybe it would actually be better. Ooh, let's do it over here because I want it to kind of showcase some of this lighter color over here. So let's make my path disappear over here. So this is going to be the vanishing point, or where we can't really see. It's going to get a lot smaller kind of over here. And I want to, let's make our path kind of come like this. We don't want it to be a little bit or too far off to the side, because the way we're going to do our trees, they would block a lot of this path. So this one's going to come kind of straight down, and then this one's going to come over a little bit wider, I think. Okay. So let's do our little, for this path, we need to do our background, or we need to add another layer to kind of be able to show that this is a true path. So what we can do is I'm just going to take this purple and I'm going to take a little bit more of that like Prussian blue and mix this in here. We don't need this to be too dark, but we just need to layer some more color on here. And I'm going to color in with about this saturation of color, maybe a little bit less. Actually, when I mix this all together, it'll be a little bit less. There we go. I'm just going to color in everything that's in this kind of horizon, but not the path. And this can be kind of light. This doesn't need to be, we don't need too much color. We just kind of need to hint to what's happening, that this is being illuminated because it's not going to be in the forest, and that's where the path is. I'm just going to fill this in here. We're going to be putting on so many details that we don't need to be too careful. I don't know why, but I just like that as it is. Just something about the shapes and the colors is kind of nice to me. Oh, hi, Sunny. Okay, so we've got a couple options here. What we're actually going to do at this time is I just want to do a little recap of where we're at. So first thing is we have added our backgrounds. Then on this one, we sketched out what our final tree is going to kind of look like, and we added in a first layer of really light trees. And then on this one, because we had a fun little vote on path or ridge, and this is the one that I don't know at this point, but this is what we're doing. We have our background, then we sketched out where our horizon line is, and we're going to darken everywhere that's not the path because we want the path to stay illuminated. And we need to let this dry before we can add in any of our little trees. Okay, now, on another topic that we did a little bit ago, we also made these little potion bottles because, yeah, we're definitely doing kind of a Halloween-y theme. And we want to kind of emphasize the fact that there's this little like level line here. The potion isn't just going to sit directly. You usually can see at least a little of the lip. And there's a bunch of different ways to do this. All I'm going to really do is on this one here, I'm going to take just a tiny bit of that Viridian, maybe with a little bit of that lime green mixed in. And I just want to get this just on the tip of my brush, so I don't want too much pigment because that'll help me get a nicer line. And I'm just going to kind of kind of hint to maybe where those two lines are. We don't need to do too much, just enough to where this is kind of more of an illustrative style, but it just kind of allows us to be like, oh yes, that is sitting here and there's some perspective where I'm seeing that. Then I'm going to do kind of the same thing for all of these. I'm going to take a color that is slightly darker than whatever I have on the top here. And I am going to kind of just emphasize a little bit of this top oval here. Don't need to touch all of it. We're just kind of hinting to it. Now, if you don't like your first layers, you can also go and add in the second layer to add more vibrancy or whatnot, or if you just don't like how they kind of look. But I really like how all these look. I like how some of those little like tiny backgrounds are showing through. It just feels like they really are kind of moving. And I'm going to grab, for this one, I'm going to grab a little bit of this kind of red-violet color. Again, I don't want this to be too dark. And I don't want too much in my brush. I'm just going to touch kind of just along here. There. And I feel like that just really helps. Same story on the third one, but with that vermilion type orange color. Just a little bit, maybe just a little bit more. Right, kind of here. There. I feel like that's better. My favorite part about watercolor, I don't know, I like so much of it, but just seeing the colors mixed together. Like I do these little exercises where we filled these in is one of my favorite things to kind of do with color because you just get to see how they move and flow together. It's so much fun. I also personally really like if in my painting style when I still do acrylic paintings, but I'm always tempted to go more towards the realistic side, and I overthink things. And the art that I personally like to look at has like a real art quality. Like you can see brush strokes and you can see the supplies doing what they want. And I think it's in watercolor, you can do like hyper realistic stuff with watercolor, but watercolor forces a lot of those mistakes, and I really like those. And so I like the fact you can't over control them. Okay. So we've added in some little details here. That's probably enough time for us to move back to add in some layering here. And I know that these are switching back and forth. If this is your first class with me, you might be like, okay, we're painting so many things. Why are you switching back and forth? But this is just intentional so that I can show you a bunch of different things, and I can also let things dry kind of naturally. Yes, yeah, watercolors let me let go in my art too. So there was also a question in there about why am I not using one of these brushes that have the little reservoir. I just find it harder to control the amount of water, and they don't have as nice of a tip. These are fun for on the go, though. Like if you're painting on a hike or something like that. Okay, so we want to take this color and we want to darken it a little bit. Now, because of what I just did to those potions and I grabbed some of that, I can actually just grab that color here. We want this to be a little bit darker because we're kind of trying to show depth. So the closer things are going to get to us, they're going to be a little bigger, and they're also going to be a little bit darker. So you want to darken this color. I'm using kind of a teal-esque color. As they get closer and closer, I'm going to lean a little bit more towards, might add in a little more blue, so maybe putting a little of this Prussian blue in this. Working on, on multiple, yeah. I have, this is how I stay interested in painting, because if I'm just doing one thing and I have to sit around and wait, I'll just go find another project. So yeah, that works for me too. Like when I showed you guys my failed ones here, I was working on all of these plus all the ones that are in the sketchbook for today's examples at the same time. Oh, yeah. I bet having a few little blue-green splatters would look kind of neat because some of the pictures I just Googled like Enchanted Forest, and when I was first looking up, I don't know, like what Enchanted Forest kind of looks like. And a lot of the ones that I saw were more they showed a lot of like animation type style things, things like in, Disney type films. And a lot of times there were like little bugs and things that are lighting up, and there's some different, I don't know, kind of floating things. So I bet some splatters would look neat on this too. Okay, so I've darkened this color, and now I'm going to add in some more trees. We're just going to be layering in a whole bunch of stuff here. So let's put in another thin one. Ooh, that might be way too dark. Oh no, when I thin that out, it was just sitting there. It was just sitting on the top of the page, and it looked a lot darker than what it was. Okay, let's make this one a little bit thicker, and maybe this one has a little bit of a branch off. Let's put in another one over here. Let's bring this one down here. Encourage some variation in your brush stroke so that it looks kind of like a tree, because trees are kind of bumpy, you know? Now, I'm intentionally keeping a little bit of mystery or a little bit of this area kind of open because I want a lot of that to kind of shine through. But I'm going to put something a little bit here. Let's hint to one here. Let's do another one over here. You can go over some of the places you've already painted and some of them not. We're just adding in, you can already kind of start to see some of that depth stuff happening. If you want to, you could even hint to, I know we're going to put one of these kind of rope things. I think that somebody said in the comment, a liana? Is that right? You could hint to some of those in here. So I could actually wrap, something around this. And that can kind of be hinted to back there as well if you want to. You could do the same thing over here. Bring it up and down. You don't need to be perfect. We're just building layers. Okay, looking over here again. This one should be dry enough. This one's still a little bit wet. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this one dry a little bit more before I start adding in those layers of trees, because otherwise it's going to get a little weird down in here. And what we're actually going to do is let's paint the corks on our potion bottles first. Okay, so for this, if you've got like a nice kind of burnt sienna, burnt umber type color, I'm going to do this over here where I'm actually supposed to put my brushes, and some like yellow ochre to make kind of a cork type color. Those two will go together to make a pretty decent cork color. And then we're going to I'm going to put this across most of this. Again, we're not going for perfection on any of these. And before this completely soaks in, I'm going to do a couple things. First thing, I'm going to lift out a little bit from the center. Second thing is I'm going to take some of this burnt umber-esque color, kind of a darker brown, and I'm going to put that around the sides just to try to create a little more dimension to this shape. It does not need to be perfect, but a little something like that will help. There's another question about the watercolor pens with the water reservoir. Let me know in the comments right now if you like working with these. I don't particularly like working with these because I don't think the bristles are very good and you never get a very good point. But they are fun to work with, especially on the go. I'm not against them. I just prefer a brush with a finer point or tip to it. Okay, so I'm doing the same thing here. I'm taking that kind of cork color, filling it in for the most part. Then I'm going to tap my brush off, try to lift a little of that pigment out, and take some more of that kind of burnt umber while everything's still wet. And mine was a little bit too dry. And then I'm going to kind of touch along the edges. Okay, so we've got a few people who don't like them very much in the comments. They can be very useful though. But yeah, if I one of the things I like about watercolor is that you don't have to have so many supplies. And so if I were working on, I obviously have way too many watercolor supplies, but if I were just getting started and I had to repurchase my initial supplies over, I would get one really good round brush, like a size 10 or 12, and that's all I would use. That would be the only brush I bought to get started. You can do a lot, or if I wanted two brushes, I would either, for my second one, I would get a mop brush or a flat wash brush. You love them, but that's all you've used? You can actually get pretty good gradients, though, with the water fill pens. Some people like them because of less cleanup. And you use them in your bag. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, these, as you can see, I've used this one. And I've actually used it quite a bit because when I used to go on vacation, we haven't gone in quite a while, but when I used to like go somewhere where couldn't take a whole bunch of stuff and I was flying, I would pack a little palette, something like this, and then I would pack one of these brushes, and then that meant I had my water source and everything, and I didn't need to take anything else. So they have a lot of options to be used with. Okay, so we made our little corks, and we did that now. We will be adding in some of the glass details in a little bit, but we did the corks now so they can dry so we can paint the glass part over it, and so that we could let this one dry. So this is that same purple that I put here. I need to make this a little bit darker for my first layer of trees, just a little bit. This one, my trees are going to kind of be like a purple-blue color. I'm going to put in a little more of that Prussian. Let's just see if that works. I think I might have put in a little bit too much blue. Okay, when that thins out, is that about the color? I think I want it to be just a teeny bit lighter, so I'm going to just put in like a brush full of water. Okay, and now it's time to add these in. And we can just going to start some of these ones here. I'm going to make these ones be a little bit further away and a little bit shorter. And maybe a little taller there. Maybe we're going to have one that has a little variation. If you want to, you can kind of wash your brush off and then soften down here. You don't have to, but if you wanted to do that, you could do that as well. Kind of show a little bit of like a light shining through or something. You're going to be getting your first stuff for your birthday. That's so exciting. All right, let's add in some of these ones here too. I'm going to make them a little bit taller because I kind of want to show a little bit of movement here. And I am going to soften the bottoms of these as well. I'm going to kind of follow that path, and I feel like it kind of makes them look like little shadows a little bit. Best brand for beginning watercolor supplies. Ooh, I've been trying to answer that question. I've been testing all sorts, and I don't have a great answer for that. They all have their own unique parts to them. I don't know. I will say, so I really like tube watercolors. They're one of my personal favorite things, but I've gotten more and more into the dried pans, partially because there is less variation in dried pans. So if you're brand new to watercolor, buy a set of dried pans because you're more than likely going to get a better result. There seems to be much more variation in how good watercolors are when you get the tube paints. Like there seems like there's more room for error there. Okay, so there's our first layer of those trees. Let's go back over to this one, because I think these are dry enough for me to add in a third layer of trees. And I need to darken this color again. I'm going to be grabbing some of that Viridian plus some of that Prussian. Those are my two main colors that I'm kind of using. And I also need to make sure I have enough of this to cover all of this layer or all the trees that I want. So I'm going to have to add in some more water and then quite a bit more of that Viridian and that Prussian. One of the worst things I've found out the hard way is running out of color if you're trying to do the same thing all in one layer and have it all the same color. So err on the side of mixing up a little bit too much. Okay, I think that one's darker enough. And let's add in some more of these trees. Maybe this one, I'm going to kind of hint to some slightly bigger trees here. Make them kind of uneven. It's okay if they overlap some areas. Maybe this one's a little bit thicker here. A little thicker at the bottom. And then over here. So the brush I'm using today is actually one that I've been working on getting made. So hopefully soon I will have some more news on that for you guys, because I've had good success in finding other nice round brushes, but they're usually not labeled well. And I always have trouble actually finding them. So the good ones, there's like way too much variation. So yeah, I decided that I wanted one that was very clearly labeled and had a really good point. So yeah, if I'm not really answering that question, it's because I had trouble finding good round brushes too. There are tons, or well, good ones that didn't cost an arm and a leg. Like when I first got started with watercolor, I remember looking at some of the brush prices, and some of them were like $30 or $40. You can buy even more. And when you first get started, you really don't need, a $30 brush. Partially because you're probably going to ruin it. I mean, This is one of the first watercolor brushes that I bought, this mop brush, and as you can see, I destroyed it. Or even over here. Let's see, did I even keep this one? So this was a Winsor Newton one, and their round brushes are pretty decent, but this was a pretty expensive one, and yeah, I let it sit in the water way too much, and I did not need this expensive of a brush to get started. No, I mean, technically you can use any brush for anything. Now, that being said, like, I have bought brushes that are technically for acrylic and use them on watercolor, but I don't in my studio. I don't ever use a brush that I previously used as an acrylic brush for watercolor, just because they get a bunch of that acrylic down here and it kind of separates. And um, acrylic is a little harder on your brushes than watercolor is, so I just kind of like keep mine separate. So I have some brushes that look kind of like this, not exactly like this, that I use in acrylic painting sometimes, but I just don't use the same brushes for the same things, I guess. So I personally like Tacklon fibers. I like the synthetic fibers because, especially for beginners, the way they move, I find them to be a little easier to control. Okay, so here's where we are on this one. Here's where we are on this one. I think I can add another layer on this one. This one's been enough time. And again, all I'm going to do is darken this color a little bit. So let's just check in on what this color is. Uh-oh, I need to interview some moderators. What's happening in here? I'm sorry. Synthetic squirrel hairbrushes. I'm sorry if there's stuff happening in the comments. I am having trouble going through there. If anybody has information about how the moderators work, or you're interested in being a moderator for these lives, if you send me a message through Instagram, we can talk about that. I'm more than happy to entertain the idea. So yeah, I'd be happy to. I know there are some of you that are already helping out in the comments, but you know, these used to be more like 30 or 40 people would show up, and now we're getting quite a few. So it is a little hard for me to keep up. Okay, making this a little darker, a little more blue. Maybe that's a little too blue. But I just want this to get a little darker with each layer, and I think I've actually made it a little too dark, so let's add in a little more water. All right, so here's my next layer color. Yes, my Instagram handle is the same. All right, I'm going to add in some more of these. These ones I want to be a little taller. I want them to be slightly thicker. Don't need to be perfect because, you know, trees don't always make sense in the way that they are. Sometimes you get a real skinny tree, even though it's super duper tall. Sometimes you get one that's not as skinny. And it's a little bit shorter, just depending on kind of what conditions they grow in. I am going to keep softening this. I liked that effect a lot. You're more of an acrylic painter? Yeah, that's how I started. I started with acrylic paint too, and I do still paint with acrylic paint quite often. There's something a little bit different that it kind of satisfies a slightly different quality or need for me, but I love watercolor. Okay, let's keep adding in those shadows. keep adding in some more of these trees. Bringing them down a little further, making them a little taller in general. Maybe a little bit thicker on some of these. And you'll notice I'm only going to put in like 3 or so trees at a time before I come down and then kind of add in those shadows, because I don't want them to sit and dry too much. You can see I am getting a little bit of that kind of pooling in those back runs because I am leaving quite a bit of water there. And, I'm just not going to overthink that too much, partially because I think it shows some interesting stuff that can happen with watercolor, and because we don't need this to be perfect, because this is, it's watercolor. We want it to have some of that natural effect. Oh, you are very welcome. It makes me so happy to hear that you guys enjoy doing these. I really do enjoy coming on here and hanging out with everybody and experimenting and just talking about watercolor and painting together. And then I love when people share what they've painted. Oh my gosh, makes my whole day if you've done that. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to come back over to these glass bottles. Again, let me repeat. These are now the 4th, 5th, and 6th bottle I've ever painted. So glass is a super hard thing to paint. And I need to work on it a lot more, but we're going to attempt to add in some of the glass features here. If you are unsure about this, at this point you could just take in some pen and do the detail work with pen to kind of turn it more into an illustrative type style. But I'm going to experiment a little bit with adding in some of the glass-esque colors and elements. This is not going to be perfect because, again, I am brand new to painting bottles, because those were the only ones I did, and I did those right before class. So take all of this with a grain of salt, and maybe I will add some pen details too at the very end. So all I'm going to do for this is, technically you want to preserve some white areas on the bottles. Keep in mind that the glass has a thickness to it. It's not necessarily just this line. That's why we made sure to leave a gap between where the potions are and where that liquid was, because obviously the glass has a certain thickness to it. Now, it is going to kind of follow some of the rules of light, but it does also reflect on to itself. So in general, we're going to want some of the glass to hint to some of the glass here as being a little darker and having a bit of a shadow, but we're going to want to kind of make everything a light gray, not everything, but leave some highlights to kind of create a little bit of that depth. And every once in a while, we want to reflect some of those colors within there. That's my general understanding of some of the things about glass. Again, remember that this is basically my first rodeo on this. You splash the color of your potion, now it looks fizzy. Ooh, that's so cool. All right, so I'm going to take kind of a bluish gray color. Oh, hold on, I got a scam call coming through. I think that might have just made the video go crazy. I apologize if that was super loud. So I am actually going to grab, let's take some of this color. That might be kind of nice. And I need to take out some here. I'm running out of room. Here we go. I've got another little palette thing here. I'm going to take what's kind of like a black type color, just for time's sake. I don't have time to mix up my own kind of blue or of this, because I think this might make a really nice soft kind of gray color for most of the color of my glass. Maybe a little bit more blue. A little more blue, because I want it to be a little bit kind of a cool color. And I want this to be super light, so I'm just going to mix this in here. Let me grab another little strip. So see, this color is not going to do way too much. It's going to be super duper light. Then all I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of touch around some of these areas. And I'm actually going to make like parallel strokes to kind of show the depth of the glass. And I'm not going to make them completely perfect, but this is how I'm going to kind of define the insides and outsides of some of those glass parts. And I'm also going to shadow in some of these areas to show some of the bulbous area. And then I'm going to make sure it doesn't cover like right here. I want that part to really kind of stay that nice white color. Ooh, way too much. And that does look a little better. Now, while this is still a little wet, I want to do a couple things. I want to take some of that viridian hue that's down kind of over here, and I want to intentionally place that in that kind of wet grayish area over here to show that it's kind of reflecting there. Maybe it reflects a little bit here, maybe even there. Let's also take some of that brighter green and reflect that right kind of over here too in some of this glass. Just kind of bring some of those colors in there. Again, this is probably, I mean, this could be greatly improved, but but it's not terrible for, adding in some of those details. I'm going to put a little bit darker gray on some of this down kind of towards the bottom, maybe kind of around this neck of this, maybe at the bottom of that as well. And there. Okay, I'm going to take a vote for, because I don't really mind. This is just a fun little experiment. Would you guys prefer to see on these other ones using some pen details to see if we can use pen instead if you're worried about trying to paint the glass on? Yes, a few different projects. Okay, yes. All right, cool. We will do pen in just a second, but first I am going to grab these other ones to look because these ones have dried enough. We are we're pushing the time limit today. Sorry about that. Okay, so in order to not push the time limit too much more, let's skip to the final layer on this one for sure, and we'll add at least one more layer on this, and then I'll come back and I will do the pen details on those. So I'm going to mix up a much darker color. I hope you guys can bear with me for just a few more minutes. And I need to re-wet some of my colors here. I need a little more water here too. So I'm going to really grab tons of this Prussian blue. We want a nice dark, dark color. And a lot of that viridian too. We want this to be our darkest color. Even more pigment. Really oversaturate this with color. More and more. You could actually probably come in with like a black on this one if you wanted to. There we go. That's a little better. All right, now I had drawn this on, and this is kind of nice if you did draw yours on, because now you just have to kind of follow the details of this one here. But you can always, oh, it needs even more color. Still not quite enough. There we go. You can always kind of follow this kind of a pattern, making just a real kind of wild tree, and I'm going to really pack in the color here. Now, technically this tree is the closest to us, so even though it's super dark, we're probably going to be able to see the most details on it. So if you want to add a little texture to this while this is still wet, you could kind of come in and pull up some of that pigment to give it a little more texture, as if you could actually see some of the areas of texture on the bark. Sometimes that can be a little fun. That did seem to help it a little bit. I'm also not going to forget to add in this little vine here. Goes up and over and down. And here. There we go. You've gone rogue and you're painting the glass different shades of blue and gray. Nice. So typically the classes are meant to be like an hour and 15 minutes to about an hour and a half. So we are just at the very kind of end of that hour and a half. You usually can get most of the knowledge you're going to need in an hour worth of the time. But every once in a while, yeah, I don't know. I liked a few of the ideas that you guys left in the comments. So I went a little overboard with deciding what we were going to paint today. But I really appreciate all the ideas you guys left in the comments. It really helps. I've been having, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. Again, I'm going to darken this color here. But, when you're really busy and like you're willing to do something, but one of the things you're not willing to do is like make the decision or come up with the idea. And so when you guys help out like that, it really, really helps. Your watercolors are too opaque. It can be the brand. Sometimes that's just the look of the colors too. And one thing I can suggest, and I know this because I'm adding another layer on this one, just FYI too. Partially because I do make videos on YouTube where I do some swatching of different colors, but also there are other artists that do the same. When you're going to buy a new set of watercolors, check on YouTube. See if somebody else has done a live swatching so that you can actually see how saturated the colors are, because the brand itself is going to obviously show you, the rosiest of versions of theirs. But if you see somebody else doing it, then you at least know, like, okay, it does look like it is as pigmented as they say or not. Okay, again, just putting a couple of those before adding in some of that shadowy detail. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I should have painted these ones over here first, because now I'm at danger of putting my hand in over here. I'm right-handed, so I'm not used to having that be such an issue. If I've got any lefties in the comments or on today's live, I'm sure you're like, yeah, I know, I'm always putting my hand in everything I'm writing or painting. Oh, I'm liking this one quite a bit. Yes, thank you. You are right, Carla. That's the one I'm using. You guys are so helpful. I really appreciate you guys. Okay, cool. Liking this one so far. I probably won't be able to. I'm probably going to add in more and more layers. I'm probably not going to be able to finish that one on live today because I need it to dry more. And I also kind of want to figure out what I want to do with the rest of it. And I want to have time to do this. So let's do some pen on this one. I'm going to put my watercolors over to the side. And let's just add the pen in. I get asked this question quite a bit. The pen that I like to use, there are all sorts of really nice pens out there, and you can spend a ton of money on pens, and I have. But here's my favorite pen. This is one that you can't paint over it because it's not waterproof, but this is just a Papermate Flare medium felt tip pen. They cost like $1 or $2, and I love these things. This is how I write like all my notes, and it's how I do a lot of my final details on paintings. Okay, so let's add in our details. Now, when you're sketching, this is just a little something that I recently found out. I watched a video on this a while ago, and I don't exactly remember what the video was called or anything, but they were exploring like, why when you sketch something out, why does it look so neat? And then when you actually see the final product, like let's pretend like we were drawing a face here. I don't know, whatever. And then when you come in and you actually make the lines around it, even if they're super smooth, it doesn't look as good. And part of that is they were talking about how your brain really likes to complete things. Like it likes to be left a little mystery to complete something, rather than the entire visual story be solved for it. So I'm going to encourage you, if you do add in some pen details, to play around with line weight and also leaving some areas where they don't quite connect. And you might find that you like that. Now, you might like making everything kind of very perfect and even. That's totally fine. But just as one suggestion to play with. Okay, so on this, again, remember our light's kind of in this direction, so I probably will be completing all of my lines that are over here because we want those to be darker. But then maybe when I come over here, I'm just going to kind of drift off. And I'm going to define in this. Whoops. All right, I'm going to unintentionally play with some line weight there because I didn't quite go over as much as I wanted to. Also, remember when you're working, I'm sure that many of you know this, but every once in a while, sometimes you don't think about this. You can move so that your hand moves more evenly, where it's more comfortable for you. I'm going to outline these, especially around this top part. I'm only going to complete parts of these. I'm really playing with the line weight here, trying to be super light. So I'm just kind of hinting towards it. Not going to touch those completely. And then on this, I'm going to make my little rectangle here. Just adding in some of these pen details. This does actually work pretty good. Now, if you wanted to like kind of continue the glass look here, again, we want to kind of hint to the fact that there is this wall on the glass to kind of show a little of the dimension there. Maybe not even finishing that part. And there. I like that one quite a bit. That looks nice. My pronouns are she, her. And you can also, okay, I'm going to add in the pen details on this one, and then let's also, I'll show you a little bit about some other things you can do with pen too. All right, again, I'm going to be a little heavier on this side. You can use the pen to help you on certain areas, like smooth areas. And then over here too. We can also hint to the fact that this is a little bit round. I feel like you can tell when I start to really concentrate because I feel like I start to talk much quieter. Maybe there's kind of like a roundness to this part too. Again, I'm going to hint to the fact that this has a bit of a wall in there. I'm just going to leave it like that. So once you've painted over pencil, you're not going to be able to erase it. You can erase like on the sides here where there's no pencil. I personally don't like to ink first. Oops, mine was not dry. I put that over. All right. Well, I don't like to ink first and then paint over it. That's just my personal preference. So depending on how you work, you're going to find different things. If you do want to be able to paint over it, make sure you find a waterproof, not a water-resistant pen. And then if you wanted to do something, you could add in some, shadow at the bottom here, just with a little bit of some lines. Yeah, so you've got a couple different options. This is just going to be a personal preference on what you like the style. You could technically also paint this first, and then you could put pen lines on it. That's totally fine too, Everybody's going to find their own style and what they like to do and how they kind of find things that are complete. All right, so just to recap today, what we did was we did some Enchanted Forests. These were inspired by somebody in the comments, these two ideas, and some magic potions. Here's how far we got with these. This one is pretty much done. I would probably add in at least one or two more trees here, and maybe a few more here. And here are these. I really appreciate the time everybody spends, and sometimes I can't believe you guys actually want to come spend this much time with me, so I really appreciate that you do. And I hope that you learned at least a few things today. And if you want to share what you've painted with me today, feel free to tag me in a video or send me pictures on Instagram. It really does brighten my day. I have been having a harder time responding on Instagram just because I'm working on a whole bunch of stuff right now, so I'm a little overwhelmed. So if I don't respond to you right away, it's not because I don't care, because I legitimately just love it. It makes my whole day. It's just because I'm a little bit busy, and I really appreciate all of your time. Also, if anybody is interested in doing some moderation stuff for me, please send me a message on Instagram. I would love to start talking about that. So thank you, everyone, and I hope everybody has just an absolutely wonderful day.